Hello and welcome to the GPP Chin Music Podcast. I'm Big Italy 42 here talking about some options for you for your tournaments on FanDuel and DraftKings tonight for this huge slate. And there's a couple guys that I'm looking at as cash game plays that are actually tournament plays on other sites. For instance, Dallas Keuchel, $11,400 on FanDuel, but $13,400 on DraftKings. So for me, on DraftKings, he's more of a tournament option, not a guy that I'll be playing a whole lot of in that regard because he is $2,000 more. He's pretty expensive on that site, so that definitely is going to turn him from a cash game to a GPP play for me. Other pitchers I like in GPPs, Chris Archer. I love his upside. I don't love his floor, especially in a matchup against this team in Boston that has been very good. But at the same time, he has had a ton of success against Boston this season, so at $12,600 on DraftKings and $12,000 on FanDuel, he's a guy that I'm certainly looking at quite a bit as my probably the highest upside play tonight on the board, outside of maybe Keuchel, because I do love Keuchel. Archer, highest strikeout rate of any of these guys over the course of the season. Over the past 30 days, he actually has the third highest behind Keuchel and David Price at 27.1. 1.10 home runs per 9 and 7.9% walk rate you don't like over the past 3 days, but you love the 14.2% swing strike rate. But he's also given up 37.4% hard contact rate. So that's what makes him more of a GPP play for me. I think he has a ton of upside. I don't think he's the safest play on the board, but I do love his upside. David Price, another guy you can certainly consider there. $12,100 on DraftKings, $11,900 on FanDuel. He's just the model of consistency. You just know what you're going to get out of this guy. He's going to give you 6 to 7 quality innings. It just depends on how many strikeouts you're going to get. But over his past 4 games, he's alternated 9 and 8 strikeouts over 8, 6, 7, and 7 innings. So we know Price has the upside. This is the Yankees offense that, yes, is tough, but he's the guy that can definitely navigate them, and he did last time out against them, posting a solid performance. Another guy to consider, Luis Severino is the guy that's pitched very well. He has had a little bit of issues with walks. In fact, 3-4, 3-3 in his last 4 starts, but did have one start at Toronto, this same team here. 6 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, had 9 Ks, so that's a solid performance. Not at the type that's going to pay off his price tag because this is still a guy that's not pitching deep into games, mostly because he is walking a lot of batters. But definitely for me, this is a guy that I'm looking at as a tournament option, especially on DraftKings where he's $10,200. Pretty pricey on there. You can definitely afford him much more easily on FanDuel at $7,400. So he's a FanDuel-specific play. DraftKings, I just don't think he pitches deep enough in the games to pay off that price tag for you, especially in a tough matchup. Justin Verlander, another interesting one. Struggled last time out against Cleveland, but this is a guy that, I'm not saying he's back to his old self, but has looked great recently. His price starting to creep up, a little bit better of a price on FanDuel than DraftKings, but certainly a guy you can consider really in all formats. I love Hisashi Iwakuma. I think he's more of a cash game play because he hasn't shown that big strikeout upside, but I think you could definitely consider him on DraftKings at $8,500. Steven Matz, we know the kind of upside this guy has. He's got a great price on both sites, $8,400 on DraftKings, FanDuel price at $86. Left his last game with a blister, but this is a guy who has big-time upside. Struggles with the long ball at times, but definitely a guy who could post big-time numbers tonight against an Atlanta team that, outside of Freddie Freeman, is just not very good at all. Other options for you on this slate, not a whole lot of cheap guys. You can look at Gio Gonzalez against Miami. Miami, a team that is decent against left-handed pitching. They do have some individuals that hit lefties pretty well. Gonzalez coming off one of his better performances this year. He's another one of those guys, though, that he's got that issue where he just doesn't pitch deep into games. I mean, he pitched 8 innings against the Dodgers a couple weeks back, but has not pitched more than 6 innings in any of his other 9 starts in his last 10. So he's a guy fairly priced on both sites, $7,900 on DraftKings, $88 on FanDuel. But he does have upside, and this is a pretty bad offense. So he's a guy you can consider. Not a guy that I'll have a lot of, though. You can look at Jimmy Nelson. He does struggle with lefties. There's not a lot of lefties in this lineup. He has also alternated good and bad starts over his last couple times out. It's a Pittsburgh offense that is swinging the bat well, so he's another one of those like single bullet type of guys for you there. Elsewhere, there's not a lot to see down cheap. I like Robbie Ray, 64 and 6,300. He's pitched well, had a couple bad starts a few weeks back, but did well, pitched well at Colorado 2 starts ago. now facing the Dodgers, and obviously still not an ideal environment at Chase Field, but definitely a guy that can post solid numbers for that price tag. Other guys that are really cheap that you can consider, there's not many. I mean, Jesse Chavez is a talented pitcher, but he's struggled big time recently. He's $5,400 on DraftKings, which I think makes him a decent SP2 and some GPPs, but 76 on FanDuel, that's a complete pass for me because he has had those big time struggles. And I'm really not trying to touch any of these other guys down here. Jared Cozart's a ground ball pitcher, but doesn't strike out many guys. No thanks for me there. Lorenzen has way too many struggles with lefties for me to consider him against the Cardinals tonight, especially with Matt Adams back in the lineup. And Mike Wright, I mean, he gets Kansas City, and they just don't strike out very much. So for me, that's about it for me. Nobody else I'm really looking at there. Moving on to catcher, you want your big upside guys, of course. So those guys are going to be guys like Kyle Schwarber. That's DraftKings specific, of course. He's still been fine recently. Hasn't been nearly as good as he was when he first came up. But he owns a ton of upside. Brian McCann, probably going to be more popular than he should be in this tough matchup because he has had some BVP success against David Price, but definitely a guy that you can look at in your tournaments. Other guys you could consider, Buster Posey, if he's back in the lineup against Cashner, he's got some upside there. Stephen Vogt, if he's in against Colby Lewis, you certainly got to look his way. I think my favorite upside guy, though, looks like he will be back in the lineup. Did sit out his last game. Wellington Castillo, barely 3K on both sides at home against the lefty and Alex Wood. I absolutely love him tonight. Other options, Josh Fegley does hit lefties better than righties, but Colby Lewis has had some issues. It is in Texas. Big time total, so I'm looking his way for some upside as well. And then Matt Wieters. I mean, he's cheap on both sides, but this guy's got big time upside against Danny Duffy at Camden Yards, where Danny Duffy struggles against right-handed batters everywhere. And Camden Yards, not a good place to be struggling against right-handed batters. First base options, of course, Anthony Rizzo up there against Dasher. Got to consider him. Votto gets a tougher matchup against Lackey, but Votto in play for me in tournaments no matter what. I mean, the guy showed last night he could put up points without even hitting the ball in the park. Just one RBI, but he had a walk, 2 hits, a double, scored a run, RBI, a little bit of everything there. Miguel Cabrera is way too cheap on both sites. We haven't seen one of those big games from him in weeks now, but I mean, he's still batting almost 350 on the season. He's under 5K on both sites. He's a guy I'll be playing quite a bit in tournaments tonight. Just think that he's going to be a guy that goes under owns because he has been struggling by Miguel Cabrera standards, but love the matchup with Anderson tonight. Paul Goldschmidt against a lefty at home. Of course, you're considering him. He's way too cheap on FanDuel at $4,000. I love him. Next guy I love is Lucas Duda. He's only $3,400 on FanDuel, $3,400 on DraftKings. Matt Whistler, one of the worst in all of baseball against lefties, 449 WOBA allowed. And this is Duda time. It's the second half of the season. He's back and finally healthy. Hasn't hit a homer in any of his last 10 games, but if there's ever a spot for one, it's against one of the worst pitchers in baseball against lefties. So definitely give him a look. Of course, Jose Abreu against Santana. Santana's one of those guys that's completely hit or miss. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. But when he's bad, he's very bad. And Eric Hosmer I'll consider as well. Mitch Moreland I'll throw in there, but he's almost min salary outfielder on FanDuel as opposed to a $4,200 first baseman on DraftKings. So for me, Moreland, great outfield GPP play on FanDuel. Not a guy that I'm playing on DraftKings, though, at first base. Second base options, Logan Forsythe is your best play once again. And DraftKings must not have gotten the memo because he's sitting all the way down at $3,700. Second most expensive on FanDuel, but he gets a lefty. Just go ahead and lock this guy into a ton of your lineups. He has insane upside as he showed last time against lefty. Put up 25 DraftKings points, so this is the top option for me easily. It's just an added bonus that he's even cheaper than a lot of these other guys. Ben Zobrist, a guy you can consider from the left side against a righty. And right, he's an outfielder only on FanDuel, second base or outfield on DraftKings, so you've got to like his potential there. Jason Kipnis only 3K on FanDuel. Not one of those guys with a ton of upside, but I do like him against Verlander if I'm playing somebody there. Robbie Cano, his price is down as well. Chad Bettis is the guy that has had big-time struggles against pretty much everyone, more so against righties than lefties, but lefties still 323 WOBA allowed. So Cano, FanDuel specifically, he looks even better, but at 4K on DraftKings, he's not a bad play there either. Other options at second base, I really like Kelly Johnson. He's cheap on both sides. Another lefty against Whistler. I'm getting those wherever I possibly can. So I'm giving him a look as well. And then the last guy to consider is Starlin Castro. He's been hitting well recently. He's a second baseman on FanDuel, a shortstop on DraftKings. I think he's an interesting off-the-radar type of play for tonight. Moving over to third base here. Love Kyle Seager. I don't love his price, but I think he's got big upside there as well. Chris Bryant should be a popular play as he faces off with Asher. Josh Donaldson against Severino, I think will be an under-owned play. I don't mind targeting Josh Donaldson against anyone right now, the way that he's hitting. So certainly in play. I think David Wright could fly under the radar because the Mets do have that big-time total, and Wright is better against lefties, but I'll be getting myself some Wright as well. Matt Carpenter, of course, he's more expensive than you'd like on DraftKings. Nice and cheap on FanDuel, though. Of course, Evan Longoria, I shouldn't need to tell you that. I'm sure you know that drill by now. Against the lefties, same story as Forsythe. Manny Machado is a great play on both sides. I absolutely love him there. You can look at Nolan Arenado if you're trying to pick on the long ball issues for Hisashi Iwakuma. I mean, he's up to 38 home runs quietly this season. People only like to target him at home, but I'll be targeting him on the road here today. Justin Turner, another interesting option there. And then if you want another option there for cheap, David Freese has had some success against Dallas Keuchel. You can look at him. And then Todd Frazier struggled big time in the second half. 2 big games in a row, so he's starting to come around. He's still almost minimum salary on FanDuel, so that's worth a look. Shortstop for me, it's Carlos Correa if I'm paying up. If not, Correa against Weaver, the fly ball pitcher, gets hit hard. Francisco Lindor, not too far behind him. I like him there. You can look at Tulowitzki against Severino. I don't love it. He hasn't been great, but I think it's a fine play still. Jung Ho Kang, even though Nelson has been good against righties, he's the guy that's in play for me. Marwin Gonzalez, homered again last time. He's another guy that I love to play, and he's in a good spot here. Interesting option here if he's in the lineup is going to be Jed Lowry against Jared Weaver. He has had some reverse splits, and I mean, I absolutely love those Houston bats tonight. Outfield options, of course, Bryce Harper is atop everyone's list there. He's very expensive on DraftKings, second most expensive on FanDuel, but he may be worth it against Jared Cozart, who is a ground ball pitcher and a contact pitcher. You don't want this guy making contact off any pitch you throw his way. Nelson Cruz against the righty and Bettis, only $4,000 on FanDuel, so great upside play for you there. Yoenis Cespedes, I'm sure you know about the drill with him by now. Get him in some lineups as well. Chris Davis has done well in lefty-lefty matchups here, and he gets Danny Duffy tonight, who has actually been pretty good against lefties, but I'll side with Chris Davis on this one. A.J. Pollock, another guy very cheap on FanDuel, all-around great player against Alex Wood. I think he's an incredible play tonight. Other guys, Carlos Gonzalez against Iwakuma. Like I said, not trying to pick on Iwakuma, but he does have issues with the long ball. Guys with power like that don't need much to send one into the seats. George Springer. I love George Springer tonight. One more Texas bat, Shin-Soo Choo, another guy that I'm looking at there. J.D. Martinez is pretty cheap. Another guy for Houston that's finally starting to get it going, and that's Carlos Gomez. Very, very underpriced on both sides for his recent production. You got to like that. If Adam Jones is back in the lineup, you're certainly looking at him against the lefty there also. Mark Trumbo, double dong upside in his matchup with Bettis tonight. And then last couple guys here, I've got Alex Gordon against Wright, especially if he's batting second once again. And then probably my favorite value play here, Josh Reddick. He's sitting at $2,400 on FanDuel, $39 on DraftKings you don't love, but he's got big-time upside there. And then as you're looking to chase some homers here, Van Slyke and Moss, very, very cheap, both sites. And then Steve Pearce is your lefty split guy against Danny Duffy. That's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.